She wrote a flawed equation on the board, daring anyone to fix it. The janitor everyone ignored stepped forward, chalk in hand. What he revealed next didn't just solve a problem. It forever changed everything the class believed about brilliance. Professor Ellen Reyes stood before her advanced calculus class on a gray Tuesday morning, chalk dust already clinging to her fingers before the lecture even began. She had taught at this university for nearly a decade, but lately her attention kept drifting toward something unusual. The quiet janitor who lingered near the doorway every single evening after her class ended. His name was Marcus Ellery, though most students never bothered to learn it. He was simply the cleaning guy, pushing his cart down the hallway, emptying trash bins, wiping down desks long after everyone else had gone home. Yet Ellen had noticed something peculiar about him that no one else seemed to catch. Night after night, she'd glance back before leaving and see him pause at the chalkboard, studying the equations she'd left behind. Sometimes he'd tilt his head as if silently working through the logic. Once she swore she saw him mouth the steps of a proof under his breath, completely unaware anyone was watching him. Ellen learned more about him from campus records. A single father, 34 years old, raising his 6-year-old daughter Lily alone. He worked the night shift to cover rent and daycare, having paused his own college education years earlier when life demanded sacrifice instead of ambition. That morning, she made a decision. She wrote an equation on the board, deliberately embedding a subtle logical error within it, one most students would overlook entirely. Then she waited, watching her class shuffle in, notebooks open, pens ready, completely unaware of the small trap she had set. As Marcus appeared in the doorway with his mop, preparing for his usual quiet routine, Ellen looked directly at him instead of her students. "Come up and solve this equation," she announced, her voice carrying across the lecture hall with unmistakable intention. The room erupted into laughter, certain their professor had made a joke at the janitor's expense. Students exchanged smirks, some already reaching for their phones to film what they assumed would be an awkward, embarrassing moment for the poor maintenance worker. But Marcus didn't laugh. He stood frozen for a heartbeat, gripping his mop handle, sensing something different in her tone. Professor Reyes wasn't mocking him. There was something sharper, more deliberate in her expression, almost like she already knew exactly what he was capable of proving. Marcus set his mop against the wall, wiped his palms against his worn work pants, and walked slowly toward the front of the lecture hall. Every eye followed him, some amused, some confused, a few genuinely curious. His boots echoed against the tile floor, each step deliberate, as though he were crossing into unfamiliar territory. He reached the chalkboard and paused, studying the equation Ellen had written. For a moment, nothing happened. Students shifted in their seats, whispers spreading through the room. Then Marcus picked up the chalk, testing its weight in his calloused fingers, before beginning to write with surprising confidence and precision. Line by line, he worked through the problem, his handwriting neat despite years away from academic work. The room fell silent, laughter replaced by stunned attention. Numbers and symbols flowed across the board effortlessly, revealing a mind that clearly hadn't forgotten what it once loved deeply. Then he stopped, tapped the chalk against a specific line, and turned toward Professor Reyes. "There's an error here," he said calmly, pointing to the original equation. He corrected it smoothly, explaining the flawed logic step by step, as though teaching came naturally. Gasps rippled through the lecture hall. Students exchanged wide-eyed glances, phones lowering as disbelief settled in. Professor Reyes, however, only smiled. The error had been intentional, planted specifically to test whether anyone in the room possessed the sharpness to catch it. Marcus had. Not one student had noticed, yet the janitor everyone overlooked solved it within minutes. "You have a gift," Ellen said, stepping closer, her tone genuine rather than surprised. "Why aren't you enrolled here as a student?" Marcus hesitated, glancing at the class still watching him. He explained quietly, Night shifts, tuition costs, and Lily, his 6-year-old daughter who depended entirely on him. College had once been his dream, but responsibility demanded he set it aside for survival instead. Moved by his honesty, Ellen promised to help, mentioning a scholarship program through the university's outreach initiative. Weeks later, paperwork completed, Marcus received acceptance into the very class he used to clean after hours. Months passed, and Marcus sat among students, notebook open, pencil moving steadily, determination etched across his face. He no longer pushed a mop through those halls. He pursued equations, proving that brilliance often hides in the quietest, most unexpected corners of life.